My whole life I've had a deep consciousness of our common humanity. I think it was mainly reinforced by a lot of travelling that I did in my student days. First of all, visiting Japan and realising the horror of Hiroshima, visiting Cambodia, realising the horror, at least after the event that was perpetrated in the genocide there, visiting Saigon at the height of the war and realising the catastrophic inhumanity to each other that we're capable of inflicting, visiting the Middle East and recognising the terrible injustice done to the Palestinian people in the guise of securing a larger responsibility to others for wrongs done to them in the past, but recognising in my experience travelling in later years in Africa and appreciating the consequences of the Rwandan genocide, my work on the apartheid regime, dealing with the horrors of racism as perpetrated in that context, all the way through my adult professional life, I've had this consciousness of the reality of our common humanity and the horror of any political environment or global environment or national environment that discounts that, rejects it, discards it, doesn't understand it. I've had a horror of racism in any shape or form, born in my early experience, university, starting out recognising the plight of Australia's Indigenous people, working with young, very bright Aboriginal people with big futures ahead of them, and then coming to terms with the reality of the psychological horrors that they had so often experienced and their inability to cope with the hostility that they perceived in the wider community around them. So I've had all these different streams coming at me, streams coming from my travel experiences in student life and in later life, experiences domestically, particularly in trying to respond to the Indigenous issues that have beset us in this country. And so, I've made it part of my life story, I suppose, to try and do my best in multiple different ways. First of all, as Foreign Minister, then heading the International Crisis Group, then being engaged simultaneously in a number of other enterprises, internationally in particular, in conflict prevention, resolution, and also trying to build a global consensus about dealing with the horror of mass atrocity crimes, genocide, ethnic cleansing, other crimes against humanity, major war crimes. All of these issues have deeply motivated me and have motivated a great many other people that have been on this journey with me over so many decades, including you, of course, Rama, and the work that we did together on the responsibility to protect issue, responding to atrocity crimes, the experiences we had together and dealing with some very great insensitivity in Sri Lanka and other countries that have not done well in terms of their record. So, looking at the world around us at the moment, it's a hard question to answer as to how we can sustain this kind of sentiment that I've felt and that I've tried to express in my professional life in a world that seems to be walking away from all the values that have motivated so many of us for so long. Values of democracy, the values of respect for human rights, values of just sheer common decency, the values of respect for the reality of our common humanity. Government after government around the world seem to be indifferent to those values or in the business of actively tearing them up. Most obviously with our intellectually and morally challenged solipsistic vulgarian now running the United States. It's just very hard to come to terms with this reality of a new indifference to values that have been so crucial for all of us for so long. So I guess in terms of responding to this reality in which we find ourselves, the the storyline has to be do everything we can, first of all, at a top-down political level to energise political leaders to understand the reality of these values and their continued salience and the importance of pursuing them, but recognising that so many of those leaders at the moment are being indifferent to that's not the only way forward. Peer group pressure, which coming from a middle power, as I do, Australia, which has shown its capacity for creative and adventurous and effective coalition building around value issues globally, the hope that middle powers can exercise some kind of peer group pressure on others and build those coalitions is an important goal to maintain, but it's one about which, again, as with the larger powers, it's almost impossible not to be sceptical at the moment, with so many countries like Canada walking away from traditional leadership roles in liberal internationalism, so many of the Europeans demonstrating either unwillingness or incapacity to move the game forward, some of the right leadership taking over in Scandinavian countries that have been traditionally leaders in this respect. So maybe at the end of the day, we have to put all our hopes on the third level of activity, which is grassroots pressure, bottom-up pressure, not top-down, not peer group sideways, but bottom-up mobilisation of popular sentiment. This is not an easy thing to mobilise in the present environment. I've spent a lot of my life trying to mobilise community sentiment on issues like nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament, global zero and these sort of things. And it's just hard to get people engaged and energised and moving on these fronts. But I still, for all that I've experienced, do have a sense of optimism about the basic human decency of people. And when people's values are challenged head on in the way they are being challenged, those values of decency, by so many of the political players at the moment, maybe there is scope there for generating a sense of distaste or disgust about that and generating some serious reaction to the forces that now seem to be in the ascendant. So my message, I guess, to you and to all those working with you in your enterprise of consciousness raising is don't give up, keep the flame alive and keep working away at nurturing that sense of our common humanity, our common dignity, and hoping that will take us forward. Let me just finish what I'm saying by reminding myself of an experience I had with my own family way back, now talking nearly 8 decades ago. My father was a working class guy, a tram driver, and he was full in the abstract of every conceivable racial prejudice it would be possible to have or to articulate. There was, I won't use the words, but you know what they would be, about blacks and Italians and Greeks and all sorts of other people that he just felt were foreigners and had no sense of connection or communication with, and was very comfortable uttering all those terrible prejudicial sentiments that we all are aware of and find distasteful. But then something happened. As a tram driver, he had the responsibility of training new immigrants coming to the country and getting a job on the trams. And so first of all was Italian. And he said, you know what I think about Italians, but there's this little bloke today called Luigi. Lovely little bloke. And, really decent character, and very, very interesting. And then a few months later, he was training Spiro the Greek. You know what I think of Greeks, fish and chip shops and all the rest of it. But, really, really lovely bloke. And then, this is what I remember as a kid, a little kid, in my primary school. And then, there was someone with a bit of black fella in him, probably the black fella. Black fella, but he's a really, really lovely bloke. And every single person that he ever actually met who was of the kind of cultural background, racial background, ethnic background, that in the abstract he had a sense of alarm or distaste about, his attitude completely changed. And that made a sort of indelible impression on me, that there is, even in the most unlikely of places, a basic human decency, and that when you do get people in contact with each other, and you can break down those barriers, that sense of difference and otherness, which is so endemic in so much of the popular prejudice that irresponsible leaders play upon for political advantage. If you can break that down through personal contact and developing the kind of cultural interchange and so on that I know you, Rama, and Alexander in the process of promoting, then maybe we can have a little bit more hope for the future of our humanity. So more power to your arm.